Great to be here. And Marco, thanks for inviting me back a second time to NOAH. I last spoke at NOAH in Berlin in 2017, so I know you want critical numbers, so I'll tell you how we've done since then. So I'm the founder of Student.com. And one question is, how did I become the founder of Student.com? I guess you could say I've been an international student all my life. I'm half Irish, half Portuguese. I was born in London, but I grew up in Belgium. And I studied in Spain and Italy and the UK before eventually moving to China. So kind of moved around quite a lot, you could say. And so at some point, we decided that helping students find somewhere to live is helpful. And so we built what is now Student.com, which is the world's leading marketplace for student housing. And I guess I've been through that journey. I studied at Bocconi and kind of walked the streets of Milan, not really knowing how much to pay, where to live, and with the rest of the class trying to find a solution. And then again, when I moved to Shanghai, it was even more complicated. So what we are today is a marketplace, online marketplace with over 1 million beds. We have 1.25 million beds, which I think puts us as the largest marketplace of our type. We're the only one with a global network, so we have beds all over the US, all over Europe, and all over Asia and Australia. So fundamentally, our mission is to help students find their perfect home. And why is that important? It's because finding housing as a student is really a mess. And it's an even bigger mess if you're an international student. And as I remember my own journey as a student, trying to find somewhere nice to live, that was really kind of brought home to me years later when, having lived in China for a while, a lot of my friends were going to study abroad, or people that I knew, their children are studying abroad. And of course, if you're moving from China, or from Vietnam, or from Singapore, or from Colombia, and you're moving across the other side of the world, everything that's already difficult for a local student is 10 times more difficult. And probably one of the things that most people don't know is that most people actually live off campus. So maybe 20 years ago, when there was only about 1 million international students, most people did live on campus because universities had enough housing of their own. But over the last 20 years, there's been an explosion of international student numbers, and therefore nobody could keep up. Here in London, we're very close with UCL, which obviously is like one of the largest universities in London. They have 30,000 students that can't find housing, and they don't have a solution for it. And I've spent a lot of time with the UCL team, and how do we build enough solutions? And that's just one university out of thousands in the world. As you can see, every country has its own breakdown of student housing. The UK is actually one of the most mature markets in terms of what we call PBSA, which is purpose-built student housing. But actually, purpose-built student housing is only one piece of the pie. Of course, a lot of people are living in traditional residential. I think one thing to understand, though, about the student housing space when it comes to the marketplace is, where do we fit in the world of Booking.com, Airbnb, or the kind of Rightmove, Zoopla on the other side, right? Well, remember, we probably all of us in this room have been students at one point. When you're a student, you're probably staying somewhere for, if it's a summer course or a pre-sessional, maybe you're staying for 6 or 8 or 12 weeks. Or if you're a full undergraduate or postgraduate, you're probably staying for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, a semester, 2 semesters, or even a few years. That's very different to what Airbnb and Booking.com offer, which is a less than 30-day product, right? So we're very different to those guys. And then a kind of, in the UK, Rightmove, Zoopla, or in the US, Zillow, every country has them. The traditional real estate space is normally an entire apartment or an entire house that may or may not have furniture and may or may not have other things included, like internet and like electricity and gas and all those things. So basically, a student wants a plug-and-play solution, but they want a price of a long-term residential solution. So I think, because of the fact that we started the business in China, of course, we've developed our product very much for international students. These are our top 5, what we call corridors. So as a business, we very much think of ourselves as students coming from one source to another destination. Of course, China is big, but so is India, so is Korea. And therefore, to service this as a business, I started the company in 2011, so we're just kind of 7 years in. We've built an infrastructure which is quite global, but of course, in a way, very Asia-centric. Our biggest team is in Shanghai. We've got about 100 people. And the team is, of course, very, very international. People who've been through the student journey themselves, so they can understand and relate to the students that we're taking care of. Fundamentally, as a business, in terms of our business model, we help students through an online journey of discover, choose, and book. And then the question is, like, why really do they need student.com? For example, what were they doing before? Yeah, there was always a solution. I mean, the thing about our industry is every single student lives somewhere. Whether that's at home, whether that's on campus, whether that's someone's house, everyone lives somewhere. So it's not an optional product like buying a car. But why should we get involved? Why are we important in this factor? Well, for students, it's firstly convenience, having everything in one place. I mean, in London alone, we have over 25,000 different options, and they come at a huge different range of price points. So having to search that all yourself and figure it out yourself is difficult, especially when you're doing it from another country. Then there's, of course, transparency, which ratings and reviews and connecting with other students helps a lot with. There's also localized listings. So our site is in 18 languages. But aside from just being localized, so you can go through the journey in French or in Spanish or in Italian or Chinese or Vietnamese, we also basically help as a managed marketplace. We help you through that journey. Our typical transaction for someone who's staying a full year is about $10,000 US. So it's as emotional as buying a car or an expensive holiday. So you probably want, if you feel like it, if it's the first time studying abroad, you want to go through it with someone else. And then, verification of landlords is very important. Trust is like one of the key things, both for the student and for the parent. We're free as well, so that's always an added benefit. And like many other marketplaces, we price match promise so that we can give people the confidence to know that if they book something that they later find a cheaper price, we will make sure that they don't get shortchanged. On the landlord side, I think we add as much value, right? I like to think that the student really is our core customer, but on the landlord side, it's just as important. Fundamentally, as any marketplace, we have to be more efficient at customer acquisition. Everybody has multiple marketing channels. We are just one. And so we have to be at least, and in every case, I like to think we're more efficient than their other channels. But mostly, we are a way to access a global market. So imagine a real estate developer in London that has, 500 beds or 1,000 beds or 20 beds. Are they going to start marketing in Vietnam and Thailand and the second and third tier cities in China? Probably not. It doesn't make sense. I think even the biggest partners, like the large publicly traded REITs, the big real estate developers in the US, even for them, it doesn't make sense to have an operation around the world. Brand building, not just at the portfolio level, but I think even more importantly for students at the asset level, so that buildings become famous and like year after year they get renewed with more students. And we're a trusted partner for universities and agents around the world. I'm going to speed up a little bit because we've got just a minute and a half. Data is obviously like one of the core things. We're the only platform that can really give real estate developers and portfolio managers a full access and full view on a global basis, from search all the way down through the journey of how students are performing, what kind of rooms they want. Do they want en-suite? Are they willing to share? How much they're willing to pay in different cities? Cool. So all of that, of course, creates network effects. The more students that book on our platform, the more properties that come online, and of course, that makes it more interesting to students. We've been growing very fast. We're still, because we started in China, we're still about half our business from China. But we've done a very strong business here in London and the rest of the UK for UK domestic, which was an important turning point for us. And then we're quite well covered across Asia, including India, and parts of Europe, including Spain, France, and so on. For me, like one of the most interesting learnings, especially when we started growing the business in Europe, was that students from Europe need just as much support as students from Asia, even though they might be much closer to their destination. Okay, so I said at the beginning that you wanted some numbers, right? Because I was speaking at NOAH last time. So this year, we did 225 million in gross bookings, which is 56% increase. Is that right? 56, yeah. Yeah, we're growing. All of our metrics are between 50 and 100%, some more than 100%. So yeah, since inception, we've done about $600 million of bookings. I think it's fair to say we're by far the largest marketplace of our type, but honestly, this is just the beginning. It's 180 plus billion-dollar market. So then with my 0 seconds left, what's next? We're, of course, testing a lot of partnerships with other adjacent categories. So insurance, banking, travel, and so on. I'll leave you there, and I wish you a great end to the NOAH. I will be around the rest of today, and I'm in London for a couple of weeks on this trip. So anybody want to find out more, please do reach out. I'm excited to speak to you guys. Thank you.